Today we are going to be talking about my absolute favorite topic, which is planning. Now, if you're new around here, I'm Sarah. I'm mom of 4. I have 3 daughters and just had my baby boy this year, so I'm now a mom of 4 and I have loved planning. My first videos on this channel like 13 years ago were about planning, and I've loved planning ever since. But it may come as a surprise that I've actually never used a homeschool planner. I've bought one, stuck with it for a week, and it just didn't work for me. And the reason is I didn't want to have to write down every single thing we do because I have a very simple weekly flow that we follow, and so it seemed very redundant, and when things are redundant I end up not doing them. And also I already plan so much for all the different hats I wear as a mom, business owner, worker, employee, all the things that I do, and I didn't want to have another thing to keep track of every week. And so I just kind of wrote it off like that's just not something I'm going to end up doing. But the longer I've been in the online space and seen what other moms have created for their kids and created for themselves, I've realized that I think a DIY planner will work for me. And so this year I've created planners for my 2 oldest daughters who are school age. I have a 7-year-old, almost 8-year-old who's going into 2nd grade, and I have a 10-year-old going into 5th grade, and then I also have a pre-K kindergartner who's not quite ready for a planner, and then my baby I just had this year, so definitely not ready for a planner. I created planners for my 2 oldest girls and then myself, and I'm going to share with you what's inside, why I created them, what the goal is with these, and how I'm going to use them. And then at the end I will also share that I am going to be selling a variation of this. It's going to be customizable, so if this is something that you watch and you're like, that is finally something that speaks to me, you can create your own without having to start from scratch, because I am selling some templates for you to use to make your own. So let's jump in. So before we actually look at these and what's inside and how I've laid them out, these are the planners for my daughters, and I just want to talk a little bit about why I did this. I have always seen planners for moms. I've never really seen a lot for students, but I was in the Ambleside Online Facebook group and I've seen a couple planners that moms have made for their children, and just that idea really sparked something in me like, wow, I could give my kid more ownership over their learning this way. And so I started there and then ended up making the teacher planner as well. But for my girls, I printed these and bound these myself, and I will put information about how I do that in the description. But basically I wanted a place for my kids to see what's going on a weekly basis. So I have 36 weekly spreads, and then I wanted a place for them to check things off, as well as many other pages I ended up adding. So I basically just went through and I have daily subjects and weekly subjects for them to check off. Now this does not mean I'm going to take my 2nd grader and be like, here you go, here's your schooling. No, we're still doing like 90% of it together. Maybe even more for my 2nd grader, like 100% of it together. But this is giving her ownership. Like, oh, we did Bible, we did scripture memory, we did morning menu. It is helping her at these younger ages start to see, okay, this is what these subjects look like, because when you're homeschooled, you may not even know what subjects you're learning because you're just learning so much, but you don't have like science class or science time or whatever. So it's helping them recognize how many subjects they're learning, what those subjects consist of, how often they do them, and then it's helping them just keep track. And even though we're doing it together, they're the ones checking it off. And so it's giving them ownership even though I'm holding her hand and walking her through it. And then it also helps me because it gave me a chance to go through, because we're combining some Simply Charlotte Mason, some of my own resources that I sell, like my Daily Riches and my science, and then also Ambleside Online. I'm taking some of their reads as well. And so I was able to map out the whole year at the start of the year, which is something I was feeling very stressed out about not having done. And so this gave me a way to do it and have a plan. And the great thing is, even if we don't get this all done in a week, I still know what was required of us and we can go back and check stuff off. So that's okay too. I also added a lot of other pages that I'll show you guys that are just gonna help us out so much and just be a great reflection of our year. Another reason why I wanted to do this is, you know, the government is always changing things of what's required, and are they gonna come knocking on our door more often in the future? I don't know. And so I haven't been great about keeping a record of like specifically what we did each day. I have all of the curricula we use, which was very open and go, and so I could replicate that if need be. But this, I could literally pull this out, pull my teacher guide out, and hand that to somebody if they came knocking on our door and said, this is what we did this week, this is what we did the next week. It's all laid out, and I even wrote in my teacher guide what specific curriculum we're using for every subject, so I'll show you that too. So it's also a very good record keeping system that I'm just doing once a year, and then I'm good to go. The other great thing, since I'm printing and binding them myself, is if any of this changes, like let's say we're sick for 3 weeks or something and we only get to some readings, I can go in and reprint and change things and then just take the spiral binding out and put a new one in, or just rebind it after I've punched the new pages. I'm not too worried about that. Whereas if I paid to have it bound like more permanently, I would be a little more hesitant to use the system for the first time, but because I can change it, I feel a lot better about it. So let's do an overhead view of both the student planners and my teacher planner so you can see inside. First up, we're gonna look at the student planners. I'm just gonna show you in this one because they're basically identical minus a few things, so when there's something a little bit different, I'll show you the inside of this one compared to this one. So this is for my second grader, Bryony, and I just went with an aesthetic that kind of matched theirs, but like I said, they're gonna be slightly different the ones I'm offering, because I want them to not have extra elements in case you don't have Canva Pro, so that way you can still use it. I also have some boy-ish ones as well. I just happen to have 2 daughters who love flowers, so keep that in mind. So when you open it, I have a year at a glance for 2025 and 2026 so that I can cross off days that we for sure aren't homeschooling or use this however I might like, or you might like if you're buying this. Then I have a place for recitation. Now I had to go through for the ones I'm selling and just write Bible verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, poem 1, poem 2, because you're gonna make this your own, and a lot of this stuff comes from Ambleside or other curriculum, like the poems all come from my curriculum, and Ambleside has their own recitation and I use the verses for that, so I cannot sell that to you, but I can show you what I have in here and you guys can take what you want, but this is like all the Ambleside stuff is on Ambleside's website if you guys are interested. And if you're interested in my Daily Riches, which I'll be referring to a lot in here, I will link to that as well. That's what I use for poetry, composer study, picture study, hymns, folk song, copywork, virtue readings, Bible, scripture memory, all that kind of stuff. So I just put in here for my second grader. My fifth graders, she has 2-page spread for each one because she is older and so she'll have longer poems. So they can recite these for their dad or other family members, as well as at our co-op that we go to. So those are in here right at the beginning. Then I took a lot of stuff from Ambleside, but not everything. We're not fully following it. We're not following it for science or history or geography. And so I wanted to add in their free reads, and then especially for my older daughter, I wanted to add some of the reads in for the main curriculum. And so I ended up just making those all free reads. I added some from Ambleside, but then I also added some of my own that I wanted my kids to read. And so I just put the pictures here. I just simply went onto Amazon, copied the picture, pasted it into Canva, and then I just drag and drop to make them the right size. So you'll be able to do that in the one I offer. I just have blank book covers that you can drag and drop images into, and then we can check it off and write when they read it, or if we want to do 5 stars or whatever here, we can. So for my fifth grader, you'll see there's a lot of just regular Ambleside reads that they are supposed to read for 5th grade. I added them into the free read, so she'll have to pick like one from up here and then one from down here. These are the more of the free reads from Amazon, and these are the ones that are actually in the curriculum. So I'm gonna have her go back and forth so that she's reading some of the books from Ambleside, just not all. And we can do the same thing. And then to make it really easy, because you can't always judge a book by its cover, I went through on Amazon and just copied a description of each book next to the picture so they can read about each book when they decide what free read they want to have. I might get some from the library, I might buy them as we go, but some we already own, but that way they have them all listed here. And I did the same thing for my 5th grader, as you can see. And then I just left this space for them to review books. So this is books that we'll read for school, books for the free read list, and then books that they just want to read on their own. And I put a few pages just to make it easy. But that way they have a record of everything they read for that year, which I think is really awesome. And then every week we're gonna do a weekly gratitude. Eventually I'd love to do it every day, but we'll start with the week. So there's 36. And if you adapt this, like if you only do school for 30 weeks, you can just delete some. It'll be really simple. If you've used Canva a little bit, you should know how to work with this in the template. So we'll just write down something they're grateful for every single week. And then I put in here maps. So we read a lot of books about the United States. We read a lot of books about just places in the world. So that way we have this handy. I'm not sure yet if this is going to be in the one I offer, but I'll put a link to where you can make your own. I don't know if I can sell it with this from a different website. So just keep that in mind. I'll just keep the world there, and then you guys can add your own maps, and you can add any other pages that you want. And then we're studying Africa this year, so I want to make sure I had an African map in here so that we can look up all the countries and locations from everything we're reading right in our planners, which will be out all the time when we're homeschooling. Then I thought we'd do our little boards at the start of the school year where they're holding it in the picture of like what they want to be when they grow up and all that kind of stuff. I thought it'd be really fun to have check-ins at the end of the summer, so the start of the year and after every term. So 2 times during the middle of the year and then 1 time at the end of the year, to kind of reflect on what was their favorite thing they read, what they're looking forward to reading, favorite subject, summer activity, Bible verse, art piece from last year, composer study from last year, song, blah, 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 blah. So they can look at the summer and last school year and then reflect on what's something new that you learned that was interesting, what's something you're proud of, an area you're working on, something you want to learn more about, something you're looking forward to, something you struggled with, and skills you want to learn or progress. So we'll just check in with this, and I just think it's really fun to check in. And this is what I'm most excited about, which was the main reason why I made this planner, was so that I can map out the whole year for the most part, but leave room to add things. So for my 2nd grader, we have daily subjects, weekly subjects, and then I'll share what these are. So daily subjects for her are Bible, scripture memory, morning menu, math, phonics, recitation, handwriting, reading for 20 minutes of one of her free reads, and then family read aloud. And so we do school basically 4 days a week, but over 5 days. But we'll do each of these 4 times. So every time we do one, she can check it off, and I can say, we just did Bible, check it off in your planner, until they get really good at doing that. And then for weekly subjects, these are things we do mainly once, sometimes twice a week. And so what I did for my Daily Riches curriculum, I went through for mine and added just each musical piece we're learning, piece of art we're learning about, what poem we're learning, what hymn, what folk song, and what virtue reading we did for that week. So I deleted those for all of the ones I'm selling, so you can add your own things in. And then the plan is, if we do a handicraft that week, like at co-op, we're doing clay modeling this year, so we'll write that in, maybe what we did that week. And then any other week, like if we're learning crochet, we'll write that in. Nature study, we can write what we drew in our nature journal or what we studied about. Written narration, she's still new to that, but we'll do like illustrated narration for her, so we can write what she did it on. What we learned for history, we're doing Simply Charlotte Mason for history, geography, and Bible, so we'll write that in. Science, we're doing my buds, blooms, and bees, and so we can write whatever lesson we did for that, because that's more like I'm just kind of doing it as I see fit. And then we're also learning Shakespeare, so we can do whatever we did for Shakespeare that week. Here I just did, for each term we have a poet, a composer, and an artist, so I just wrote those here so that the kids can kind of refresh their memory of who we're learning about. And then I added the hymn and folk song, but you can make those work for you. You could even make this box bigger, make it smaller, add more boxes, take away boxes, change any of these. You'll just have to go through and do it for every week. And also these fonts I bought, so I just changed the fonts to something that looked very similar for you guys. And then down here, what I did is I took some books from Ambleside that I wanted to read as a family, which are these 2. And then I took 3 books for each girl that I want them to read for themselves. So I'll probably be reading with them for the most part, but it'll be their independent books. And so for my 2nd grader, she's, at least at this term, she's going to be learning The Little Duke, the Burgess Animal book. We've read a lot of his books, but we have not read that one yet. And then she'll be doing Tree in the Trail and Seabird. She'll also be doing Understood Betsy later on. But then as a family, because we've not worked through these 2 that I really want to do that are over many Ambleside years, we're doing Trial and Triumph pretty much this whole year. We'll do one a week. And then Parables from Nature as well. And so I added those here. And that way I could just look at the Ambleside list and schedule and then put in the chapter. So it's really easy for me and for them, if they're reading it on their own at all, especially my 5th grader, to know what they're doing for that. And all of these, like if you change the colors, you can change the colors of these too. So it's really easy to adapt. For my 5th grader, hers looks like this. So it's very similar, different colors to match hers. The only difference is instead of phonics, like she already knows how to read really well, so we're doing spelling and grammar through Simply Charlotte Mason. And instead of handwriting, which I may still have her work on, but we're doing a lot of copy work and stuff too, so we'll do typing. Everything else is pretty much the same, except her 3 reads on her own. She's doing Age of Fable, Wild Animals I Have Known, and Great Inventors and Their Inventions. So that's all in here laid out. So every week just looks like that. So I plan to just have like the 1 page out, and they have that at the table, and whenever we do a subject, I'll tell them to check it off, and eventually they'll be able to do it on their own, and by the end of the week it'll all be checked off. If there's anything we didn't get to, we can always go back and check it off later, but that way we have a record of everything we did. And like I said, I can always change out pages if need be. So then in between terms, I have the term check-in, just like I had at the start of the year, except it says favorite school book this term instead of the summer. Same idea. And then what I did is I went on Ambleside Online and I went through their exams for the end of the year. And since we're not reading all the same books, I adapted it. Like we're doing My Science, but we're also doing the animal book, which is a natural history. So I just took some of the questions from there. If it's something that's included in a different curriculum, it already has an assessment or exam in it, I just wrote that included in Simply Charlotte Mason. Same with dictation, arithmetic, that'll be in the Good and the Beautiful. We don't have to double up. But I just copied that from there. So that'll be blank. It'll just say fill in your own exam here. But that's what I did. And then it just continues on throughout the year with another exam and check-in at the end of term 2 and then at the end of term 3. And then it just looks really pretty on the back. And so that is the student planners in a nutshell. And now let's look at my mama planner. So my homeschool planner. Now a lot of the stuff in this will not be available in the one I'm selling. So keep that in mind, because a lot of this I got on the Ambleside Online Facebook group, which people put out, and I can't sell anything like that if I didn't create it and it's affiliated with Ambleside in any way. But, and the covers may look different in colors and things, but in general it'll be pretty much the same. So this is something that I cannot give you, but I will have the information of where you can get this Excel spreadsheet for each year for Ambleside Online and adapt it for yourself. I will put the instructions in the description. But Katie from Little House Learning Co. on Instagram, and she has her own shop. I've actually met her. She's amazing, and she has shared about her teacher planner, which was the first planner I ever saw that I was like, I think I could actually use this. And so she's the one who I learned about this from, but she did not create this particular document. I will put that in the description. But basically I adapted this heavily to make it fit for my family. But if you know Excel pretty well, you should be able to do this, and then I just printed it out. So basically every column is a different week. And so yes, my kids have this, but it also is a good overview for me to see what we have going on for the week. So I have Bible study, history, and geography here. I use Simply Charlotte Mason for that, and we're doing that 4 days a week. So I can just check it off each time we do it. We're gonna do Awana verses for our scripture memory, since I'm not using Daily Riches for Bible this year because it's all tied to history and geography for Simply Charlotte Mason. I could use my Daily Riches for that, but we also do Awana, so it's nice to just do those verses. So every time we practice that, I'll check that off. Then I went in and wrote in here my Daily Riches curriculum, just so like I said, if the government comes knocking, I can just show them this and show them exactly what we learned. So for picture study, we're doing Raphael for the first 12 weeks. So we do that once a week. So when we do it, we can check it off. Same with composer study, virtue reading, hymn and folk song. Like they're 2 different things, but I just put one. And then when we read our poem, I can check that off. Also, these actually are for Daily Riches, but since they fall under more of language arts, I put them here. So this is copy work. We'll do a copy work for our poem and a copy work for our scripture verse through Daily Riches. So I check that off here. And then for my oldest daughter, Celia, whenever we do Using Language Well, since I don't know exactly, like every week we may do it a little differently, I just put the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I can check off whichever days we did it. Same with dictation and spelling. and her written narration. Whenever she does that, I can check that off. Later on in the year, I put 2 because I want her to do more as she gets older until she's eventually doing 1 every day. For my 2nd grader, she's going to do Explode the Code 4 days a week, and she's 2nd grade preschooler / kindergartner. She'll be 5, like 5 days before September. So she's kind of in between, but she's definitely ready to start learning phonics. She knows all her letters and sounds really well. So we'll probably be doing that 4 days a week, or I'll just check off however many days we do that. For math, whenever we do a math lesson, I'll check that off. And then I went through just like I did for the girls, and I took all of these readings and I just put them in here as well, so I know what's going on. Like, they have it in their journal or their planner, and I have it in my planner. So Trial and Triumph, Parables of Nature, I can fill in what we're going to do for Shakespeare that each week. A family read aloud, and I can put what the read aloud is here. If it changes before 6 weeks, which I'm sure it will, I can just put 2 different books or something. I'll figure that out. And then I put each girl's individual readings, so Age of Fable, Wild Animals I Have Known, Great Inventors and Their Inventions, and then their own free reads. I can write here, or maybe put like a little note down here of what they're reading, or on a different page if I can't fit it all. Same with my 2nd grader. Then I have science here. We're doing Buds, Blooms, and Bees. Nature hike, nature journal. I can do like where we went and what we journaled that week. And then other, we have morning menus, recitation, co-op, handicraft art, Celia typing, and then laying down the rails is something we want to do as well. So I just put the virtue or habit we're going to be working on. They have a recommended order to go in. So obedience, attention, truthfulness, and then I left a couple blank as the year goes on. But that way every week I have it, I could check it off. And then at the end of the year, I can easily know where we are. And that way if we don't get to anything, it's really easy to just be like, okay, it says we're doing this week, but we didn't get to that, so I'll just double up this week, or I'll do this one and we'll just get to it when we get to it. But it's just really easy to see at a glance. Okay, and so then the rest, so this part that I'm going to be showing you for a few of these pages is included in the teacher planner. You just have to make it your own, and I'll kind of make it less specific to my family when I sell it so that you can make it your own. But here I have the daily schedule of a loose schedule. Like, it changes, and I can always reprint this as things change, but this is our general schedule for the day. And then I went through, which helped me so much, this is my favorite thing to do, is tie certain subjects to certain days so that it's a well-oiled machine. And that's why I haven't really used the planner, because on Mondays I know what to do, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and so on once I get in the groove of the year. But it's all right here, so I know exactly what to do when, and that I can always change and reprint as well as needed. And then I thought it would be helpful, I have a meal rotation, and then meal ideas I can fill in so that when I'm meal planning every week, it's a little easier. Then I have 2025 and 2026 at a glance. And then I went through and just put a monthly calendar in, because I just think it's helpful to be like co-op. Anything related to homeschool I can write in, or we didn't homeschool this day, or sick, or whatever. So I know specifically like why we didn't do homeschool on certain days, or what was going on, or if we have a field trip that still is homeschool related, that would still count, but it's not going to be on the other planners. So that can be in here all the way through June. And then I went through and I wrote down every single thing we're using, every book, every curriculum for my girls, so that it's just a year at a glance, and that way I can reflect back on it when I'm planning for future years for my kids. Also, if the government comes knocking, I have it all down. So I just went through and did that for all 3 of my girls. And then I picked a bunch of read-alouds. This is our first year where I'm picking all the read-alouds, because we're not doing like an all-in-one curriculum. We've done Heart of Dakota and Peaceful Press. This year, I'm so excited. We read the Narnia books last year. We read all the Little House books the year before. We read a lot of great American history type books and classics and stuff the other years before that. But I'm excited to pick all of our own this year. And so I put 20 different books that I want to read with my kids that we haven't read yet here. And then I put a place for myself to review any of the books we read, and I might even use it for my own personal books. I haven't decided yet, but I have a lot of pages in here. So I have a place for me to do the weekly gratitude as well. And then I have the same maps that the girls have. And then I also put the check-ins for myself. I just thought, I'm gonna look back on what I did. Like, this is my life too, even though it's their schooling, but I get probably more excited than they do about all this stuff. So I can keep a record of my favorites. And then I just left some blank pages to plan next year. So whenever I have a thought about, okay, I want to change this next year, I want to add that, or I want to make sure we do this again, I can write it here. I have quite a few pages for that. And then almost all of this, except at the very end, I just put some blank pages so I can title them whatever I want if I have anything else to take notes on. But the rest of this is not included in what I sell, and this is all stuff other people created. So I will try to link to as many as I can, but most of them are in the Ambleside Online groups. So I probably won't be able to recreate where I found all of them, but if I can, I'll put it below. Otherwise, join the Ambleside Online Facebook group and look in their files. So these are narration cards from TaraLeeInman.com. So whenever we're doing narrating, if I have like, if I want them to do it a different way, I have little cards that remind me of like different ways we can do that. I have an Ambleside geography overview, so I can make sure that, you know, we're not following this exactly, but I have a good sense of like if we're where we should be for all of those. We're reading A Midsummer Night's Dream, so I found some printables about that. That didn't print that well, but these are all the different characters I found online somewhere. And then Katie also talked about these in her, and I will link to her highlight about her planner so you guys can see it, because I got a lot of inspiration from her. She shared about these like cheat sheets where people go through and like write about each chapter and any vocabulary words or characters or things to do on a map. It's very, very handy, and so I did a lot of those for different books that we're reading from the Ambleside list, like Age of Fable, The Story of Inventions, The Little Duke. I don't even know if that was from there, but just different things from that website I'll link below, and the Ambleside Online files in their Facebook group. I added, I read a bunch of the Burgess books with my oldest daughter when she was in first grade, and so we had the same app, so I have that for my daughter for when we read the animal book. And then somebody created this with all the different animals so that they can see what they actually look like. So I just printed that so it's handy when we're reading it. And then I have more things, notes and things and map work from Tree in the Trail. And then a map, which I have here, and that's also for Seabird. And then Understood Betsy has notes. And then that's it. And then the rest is just blank pages. So that is my teacher planner. I cannot wait to use it. So I just want to quick show you guys how a Canva template works. So this is the 4 designs that are more girly: a meadow, a floral book, butterfly, and then another floral one. And then the more boyish ones, I mean, they don't have to be for boys or girls, but just I was trying to plan for both. So there's like fungi, a mountain, a forest, and then this like fun navigation one. So you get 8 planners with this. You can, so if you have multiple kids, you can print out a different one for each kid, but they're all the same minus the graphics and colors. So let's say you bought this, you would open the PDF and then you'd click on the link, and then it will take you to Canva, and you will edit the template. And then it looks like this. So you'll be able to edit everything, change colors, but here are like the monthly spreads. And then for the recitation, I just put where you can put in your own verses and poems. You can delete pages and add pages. This is where you can add the books and descriptions. There's the book reviews. Weekly gratitude. This is where you can add maps, and I include a link to where you can do that just because I couldn't sell the maps that were in there. The check-in sheets, and then the weekly spreads. You can make, if you have more books, you can like highlight all these, make it smaller and add more if you want, or like double it. It's totally up to you, and you can edit it to your heart's content. So that's what it looks like for the student ones. And then for the mom or teacher planners, they look like this. There's 4. There's like the abstract one. That's the same one that I had for the most part. This pretty watercolor floral, a watercolor stripe, and then a floral book. So let's say you did, we'll just do the floral book one. So you'd click open template, and it'll take you to Canva. You do not need a Canva Pro account. you can use the free version. I made sure everything on here was free so that you don't have to pay anything additional. And then, so I included extra stuff in here for you guys than what I used. So you have the cover, you have the daily schedule, the weekly layout for you to fill in, a meal rotation, meal ideas, the year at a glance, the months at a glance, and then I added these weekly sheets. So on the left side, you can label these however you want. So if you want to do days of the week, there's 5 columns going to the page on the right as well. And then there are 6 of these boxes and then bullet points, so you can do subjects or times of day, or each one could be a kid. Like, you can set it up however you want. And then there's 2 extra lists, and then I include 36 of these, but you can edit them, like I said, to your heart's content. And then there are the other sheets that I showed in the video. So there's the year overview, so you can put all their curricula they used, the free reads, the book reviews, the weekly gratitude, maps, just like the student ones, the check-ins, and then next year's plans, and then some blank ones. You can label them yourself, and then that's it. I hope you enjoyed this look into my DIY student and teacher planners for this year. I am so giddy about these. I'm so excited to use them. I've been showing them to my kids constantly and just like all my friends because I love planning. And so I'm excited to show my friends here on YouTube as well. I'm sure I'll be checking in about these on my Instagram, so make sure you're following me at Homeschool Glue. And if you saw these and you're like, that is right up my alley, where can I get one? I have created these into multiple Canva templates. Now, the specific planners you saw in this video use some Canva Pro elements because I was not intending to be selling these when I created them. I was just creating them for me. So I went back in and used different elements that are free. So even if you don't have a Canva membership, you can still use their free account and create your own. So hopefully that will be helpful. And I will have links to those in the description. Now, if you don't like the way they look, you can always change all the graphics and colors and things, but the basic layout will be yours to do whatever you want with. You can change the subjects, you can change the fonts, whatever. It'll be a template, but it will be the starting place that will hopefully save you a few hours of not having to recreate the whole thing. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Happy homeschooling. I'll see you soon. Bye.